build it back up.
Now? Okay. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the budget meeting for fiscal year 2017. Today's date is November the 16th, 2016. Welcome, everybody. Trustees, do you have any comments before we start? Trustee Oswald?
Not at this time.
Trustee Sturts?
I just want to thank all the department heads. What great effort you went through to get these reports to us and the narratives to us in a timely fashion. What a great job you did on them. So thank you for that.
Fiscal Officer Luby?
Again, thank you to the department heads for diving into the budgets. I know it's a long and tedious project, but I know it's one you take seriously, so I do appreciate that. And FAB members as well, thank you for working with the department heads and diving into the budgets and asking questions. Thank you.
Very super ditto to that. Thanks, everybody. It's great reports, easy to read, and I know that a lot of thought has gone into this, so we will begin. All right, opening remarks. Let's begin with you, Mr. Landrum.
All right, thank you. The information provided tonight and tomorrow night are all available online at delhi.oh.us. You go under Departments, Administration, and under Administration you will see Budgets. So all the information is available for public review and has been for public review. As things have been updated, we've been updating the information as well. Did want to discuss too, just briefly, tonight will be police, fire, and public works. Then the following night, tomorrow night, will be community development, which includes zoning and the lighting districts, parks and recreation, and then, of course, administration, which will include a wrap-up of TIF. We will be discussing, as we do each department, I put it on there this year, as typically the last thing for that department is a TIF request review, so that if there's any specific questions towards the TIF that I can't quite answer on more technological or more detailed information, the department head is more capable of answering more details. I too wanted to publicly, people probably don't realize what all this has been through, is that first we started in August. September, department heads did their budgets through the system and started doing all their narrative to their budgets and analyzing. They submitted that by the end of September, by October 1st. And then October 1st, we started pulling the data together, and they had meetings with myself first just to review anything glaring. And then we met with the fiscal officer and the financial advisory board, met with them, and they're going to be, of course, giving you a synopsis or a review themselves tonight. I did want to thank the financial advisory board. They always give good feedback. It's always good for a second, third, fourth pair of eyes on the budgets, and you can just tell that they really do their homework because how many questions and intelligent questions that they ask. So I do appreciate that. And we will, like I said, everything's available online, and we will also have these budget hearings. They are being videotaped, and so those will be posted to YouTube and Facebook as well. So thank you.
Okay. The process that we'll follow this evening is that we will begin with the either department heads or those designated as acting department heads this evening. After that, we will follow with a recommendation from the representative of the FAB board by department, and then the trustees and fiscal officers will finish with any questions or comments that they might have. Now, public questions come at the end of the closing, so anyone here that has a public question to ask, if you would mind, we will take those at the end of the presentations. Okay? So tonight we get to begin with Delhi Township Police Department, represented by Lieutenant Jeff Braun and Lieutenant Joe Macaluso.
I would ask department heads to please be sure, and the board and fiscal officer as well, if we're referring to a specific page number, let's definitely refer to page blank of blank so we're all on the same page. I appreciate it.
First and foremost, I really appreciate you guys letting us be a part of this. It's a good learning tool for us as far as police administrators. But most importantly, I'd like to thank Mr. Luby for helping us out, Mr. Landrum for helping us out as far as with our budget numbers, as well as the FAB. I mean, without them folks, obviously this would probably be a lot more difficult than it really is. So I can't thank you guys enough for helping us out. Just to cover a few things that we were able to accomplish in 2016, I think you'll see to it when we're going through the numbers. We continue to be fiscally responsible. That was one of the primary goals, and will continue to be primary goal for us as far as years to come. This year, we increased our sworn officer complement from 29 officers to 31, and that was done so without even adjusting the salary line item in the budget for 16. The 30th officer we hired was Abby Ballman, and she started at the beginning of September, and Kyle Venemeyer is soon to begin the police academy on December 5th, with a graduation date of sometime in July. This was the first year that we paid 100% of shared services. We also sent property room custodian Barb Merlenbrink to marijuana identification training. That way she could test marijuana when we make marijuana drug arrests. She could test that as well and provide documents for the court. That alleviates us when we get to the budget numbers. You'll see a pretty good increase in as far as coroner fees. So that's going to help us alleviate the cost and bring that down a little bit. As far as training goes, there was a lot of additional mandated training from the state this year. It went from 4 hours to 11 hours for every officer. So we had to accommodate that extra 7 hours, obviously, in the schedule, along with as far as the budget goes. A special thanks to DCPA. Those folks, without them, we would obviously have some trouble getting some certain equipment that we need to purchase. So we have a few of them in the audience as well. This year, they gave us $10,000 to purchase flak jackets for all of our cruisers, and they recently gave us $15,000 to purchase riot gear for every officer. In the event, hopefully we never need it, but just in the event we would need that. And obviously, everybody's aware that we obtained new radios, portable radios this year at a drastic reduced cost. It probably saved us about $150,000 just buying them, the radios we bought this year. And with the recent levy passage of the park, and we're going to get to 32 officers this year. And for those that don't know that, we were at 32 officers back in 2004 when the levy failed. So it's been a goal of Chief Howarth all along to get to that number. And if he was here, he'd probably be doing cartwheels because, you know, we're pretty pumped about that, reaching that 32 number again. That being said, does anybody have any questions as far as from the board for the year-end review that we typed up and submitted to you guys?
No questions.
Questions? None here. Fiscal Officer Luby?
No question.
Okay.
Okay. With that, we'll begin jumping straight into the numbers. I'm going to be working primarily from the numbers that we provided, our worksheets, and that starts on it looks like page 21 of 45. I'll give you a second to get there.
I'm there.
This is the 09 account revenue line items. I'm going to hit the highlights and some changes that we saw this year, or for next year, I should say. In real estate property tax, we've seen a 1% increase, which doesn't seem like a lot, but it's a couple $100,000 as far as our projections go from 2016. The decrease you see in federal grants, the next line item is 0301 federal grants. That's primarily due to the number of vests we need to purchase for 2017. We get 50% reimbursed from the federal government as far as when we buy bullet-resistant vests for the officers. State reimbursed training, you're going to see that that's going to be increasing, from, like I said before, 11 hours for 2016. It's going to 20 hours for 2017. And we get reimbursed at $20 an hour from the Attorney General's office for that training. Next page, 22 of 45, you're going to see a decrease in web check fingerprint revenue. That's primarily just the service itself. We've seen a decrease in that. We're not sure exactly why that is. I don't know if other agencies in the area are providing the service, but we've seen a decrease in that, so we had to adjust that line item down 25%. A very nice line item you're going to see in there at 0310, which is the PRO revenue, which stands for Park Resource Officer revenue, that's money that we're going to be given from the parks to help us pay for the 32nd officer we're going to hire to cover that special detail in the parks. And then the rollback, homestead, and 2.5% rollback, you're going to see minor decreases from 16 to 17 in that. And those numbers are provided to us from the county. Revenue for drug and law enforcement fund, it's on page 23 of 45. The biggest change on that set of numbers is going to be the forfeiture line item. We covered that in detail as far as in our year-end review. Those numbers come from the drug seizure we had over on Fair Road a few months back, where we seized a couple cars, a lot of drugs, and about $26,000 worth of cash. So that's why that number you see there, we won't get that money until 2017. We have filed the paperwork to obtain it. We will not get that cash as far as for us to actually have until 2017. But other than that, the numbers in the 22 accounts pretty much stayed pretty much the same.
Lieutenant, if you would,
Yes.
for everybody that may be watching this or not understanding, Fund 09 is your the basic police operations, but do you want to tell everybody that may not know what the drug seizure fund can be used for and is utilized for?
Absolutely. Excellent question, excellent comment. Basically, when we get drug funds, those monies can only be used for training for drug officers, training for canine, anything that's drug-related or DUI-related. You'll see categories in here from forfeitures to mandatory drug fines. Those are monies that we get from the court as far as for drug fines. All the revenue that's listed in the 22 section can only be used for drug-related expenses. This year, and I'll get to that here in a little bit as well, with putting some officers in the drug work, training those officers can come out of that, equipping those officers can come out of that. Anything that's really drug-related in itself, that comes out of the 22 accounts. The 09 operating account is basically our normal operating budget that's fed by the levies that we have currently. Okay, let's jump right into the 09 expenditure accounts. That's on page 25 of 45. We'll run through there and highlight some of the changes. Give you a second to get there. The very first one, which is the biggest change throughout the budget, is going to be the salary sworn account. For 17, you're going to see a 9.31 increase from 16. I know it might seem like it's a lot. That includes a 1% salary increase by contract for the sworn officers. But when you take into account that we're going from 29 officers for the 16 budget to 32 officers in the 17 budget, and we're only going up 9.231%, by adding 3 employees, I think that's a pretty low number. So we're going from 29 to 32. That includes the 2 officers we're going to put in the drug work, as well as the park resource officer. Jumping down to 0201, sworn PERS, the last item on page 25. That increase, again, mirrors that of the salary sworn due to the additional 3 officers. Going to page 26 of 45, highlighting patrol equipment purchases, you're going to see a drastic decrease there. And that's primarily, I wanted to kind of go over a couple things here in addition to what I've already covered with the equipment that we obtained. In 16, we purchased secondary officers secondary weapons for the officers, which was $4,600. Simunition, training equipment, accessories, which was $19,000. Some radio equipment that we needed to purchase when we obtained the new radios, as well as some holsters and accessories when we purchased the firearms for the officers. The very next line item is going to be office equipment purchases, which is a 92% increase. I know 92% increase seems like a lot, but we're only talking additional $4,500, and we're going to purchase new desks for the supervisors because the desks are from 1993, and we're having to prop them up with some cardboard and screw them together a little bit to get them to hold better. So in 1993, I think they've survived what we originally purchased. So The biggest percentage increase in the whole entire budget is going to be the next one, which is other tools and equipment, the last item on page 26. That's primarily for a couple items that we had to add to that line item. Generally speaking, that account was used to purchase additional things for new cruisers when we had them, in case something would come up that wasn't in the original budget. We used this account. But you'll see in the remarks there, we had to purchase a camera system for the new firehouse over on Greenwell that wasn't originally budgeted. We're going to be doing processing of some OVIs and stuff over there, which is drunk drivers. We have to have a camera system in that office. So that wasn't originally in the budget, so we had to obtain that. And the camera systems we have to use are quite pricey because they have to be voice sync activated. So when you're watching the video, the lips have to match the sound, so it doesn't give the appearance that it was altered in any way, shape, or form when we have to take it to court. So we can't just throw some inexpensive camera in the room and have that be sufficient. $7,000 we're due to purchase a server for our records management system. An additional $28,000 in that item is going to mirror the TIF account when we get to that. We have to purchase new MDCs, which is computers for the police cars in 2017, at a total of $56,000. When those things come up for renewal, we don't have much of a choice. RCIC, which is who runs the police computers, pretty much tells us, hey, this is an expense you're getting next year and this is what it's going to be. And if we don't get on board with it, the computers in our cars are no longer compatible, and we have to jump on board. So this year, it's actually half of it's coming out of the police budget and half of it's coming out of the TIF budget, but we'll talk about that a little bit when we get
Well,
to that.
I will say that is, remember when we had to have the special meeting for the TIF meeting to discuss the purchases of the radios? When we had that meeting, that large number that we were like, okay, we have to figure out what we need, what we can wait, what we can share, what we can, and what he's that the MDT, is it MDT? Did I get it?
MDCs.
MDCs. I'll get it right one of these days. Mobile data computer. There you go. That was part of those numbers that you had seen. So you will see, because remember the TIF budget is stretched next couple years, really thin. The police, fire, and other departments you will see some capital, smaller capital, not 200,000 or anything like that, but smaller capital items in their operating budgets to assist in, not to put their funds in jeopardy, but simply, the TIF cannot at this point in time do it all. So things he's referring to now, like the in-car computers, we figured, okay, we split 50-50, and so the total is 56,000, so TIF picking up 28, and we'll discuss that later. But I just wanted you to be aware of when you start seeing some other capital items in the regular operating, just be aware of, because that's because of TIF, the issues we've had with funding with that. So you're just going to see more of that than I would say previous years. Okay.
And then also in that same account, there's additional $2,000 in there just in case we have a monitor or computer problem or something breaks that was normally covered by the TIF budget when we purchase new computers and stuff. Page 27. You'll see a gasoline. There's a typo in there. It's a decrease in fuel versus an increase, which is a good thing. Patrol supplies, you're going to see an increase mid-page there on 27. That's primarily for the additional training that we have to do and getting the officers prepared for any given situation. Next page, 28 to 45. You'll see an increase of 47% in shared fleet supplies. Even though it's 47%, we're talking, it's about $700, I believe, if I recall correctly, yes. That's just increased as far as the supplies that we provide to the Public Works Department. Going down to 1203, health insurance, there's an increase there. Again, it's not a big increase, however, 3% increase, just shy of that, and we're adding 3 employees to the budget, so a 3% increase is pretty good. We'll take that on any given day.
And that's guesstimating the plans those three would take, and plus changes of enrollment from going from single to family. You know, it's just a guess because we don't have that data yet. We haven't had open enrollment yet, so.
Next page, 29, communication fees. For once, we're talking communication fees on a highlight. We got a 22% decrease in 2017 because they locked the dispatch fee as $15 per detail. So that's huge. When you're talking, it saves us about $33,000. So kudos for locking it at $15 per detail. 1404 down at the second to last item on the page, association dues and assessments. You're going to see a decrease there of over 50%. We took that $7,000 for a software item and put it actually into the account it should be under software. So you're going to see an increase there, and you're going to see a decrease here. Going to the next page, page 30, you're going to see an increase in telephone service. And that's just, we had to adjust that due to actual usage over the past couple of years of 7.69%. 7% increase for water and sewer, the next item. And then natural gas, shockingly, we're going to see a decrease in that. And I think we attest that to the newer equipment that we purchased and put in the buildings as far as the HVAC system. We've seen a decrease over the last few years, and hopefully that continues. Page 31 of 45. Medicare, you're going to see an increase due to additional officers, an 8.26%. Prosecution and coroner fees, I mentioned this before, almost a 24% increase for 17. And I can't imagine that the costs are going to go down. I think we're going to see just additional increases, you know, what the new building and structures they're going to build and the equipment they're going to buy as far as to the coroner's lab. Software and software support, you're going to see the increase there that I just talked about, the $7,000 for our Lexipol. That's our policy and procedure manual that we get electronically, which also provides a testing mechanism for the officers on the policies every day. Legal counsel labor, the last item on page 31, it increased 100%. Mere fact, it's a contract year next year, so we're going to be negotiating contract at the end of 2017. That's why that's an increase there. And then moving right into the 22 accounts, the drug accounts like we talked about before. There's some drastic increases in here. However, these line items mirror that of the increases of the revenue. And the major item there, you're going to see other miscellaneous. The last item in 0810 is $10,000. We put money in there. We just recently selected an officer that's going to go to the drug unit, and we're not sure exactly what expenses we're going to have as far as training, if there's any needed equipment items. Obviously, the dividends hopefully is going to pay huge to the community for you all approving that. So otherwise, the accounts are pretty much, they stay flat with the exception of the training line item in the 22 accounts. And if there's no questions there, I'll move right into the TIF accounts. I'm going to your TIF. Yeah, let me get the page number. 4 of 23?
That's one of them. 4 of 23 under administration and or the actual TIF, the Excel or the Crystal reports expense-wise would be 21 of 23. So, well, let's see, what the comments would be starting with 23 of 23. So 4 of 23 is the master plan through 2024, and page 23 of 23 is the actual Crystal report with the explanations on it. So whichever one you want to tackle there, Lieutenant Braun.
We basically have 3 different items for a TIF request for 2017. Our normal police cruiser allotment is we're requesting 3 police cruisers, which is $120,000 of that 148. The other 28,000 is the other half of the MDCs that we just discussed. And then a generator, we've been limping along with the generator we have for some time. We keep trying to push that off and push it off. until it's absolutely necessary. The generator is the original with the building, and it's just becoming harder and harder to get parts for it. And obviously, if it fails and we have a power outage, that could be obviously a major problem for us in the police department. But those 3 items are the only requests we have in the TIF account. 3 police cruisers,
The half of the,
half the MDCs, and then the new generator.
right.
Other than that, that's all I have.
All right, then, let's begin with review from the,
I actually do have a few questions. I didn't know if you were going
Fab
to go
was
through.
going to go first.
Okay, is that all right?
I believe that was the ruling.
Yes.
All right. All right, Fab Representative Dale Weisker.
First of all, I'd like to recognize the other members of FAB beside myself who participated in the review, and that was Pete Feichner and a new member to FAB just recently, Scott Heenan. And we appreciate and thanks all the effort done by Chief Howard, Lieutenant Braun, and Lieutenant Macaluso. As always, they had everything we asked for and more in their budget, and it just every year it's that way. They do a great job. So after looking at it, the FAB recommends the adoption of the police budget.
Okay.
Any questions?
No questions.
No?
Thanks, Dale.
Thank you, Dale. All right, now, trustees, Trustee Oswald, you're ready to go.
I'm ready. All right, the first question I have is throughout the year, last couple of years, a lot of times, I know you write your budget and you put the number, you used to put the number where you would anticipate the reimbursement or grant. So when I'm looking at these numbers, for example, page 25, and you're talking about the reimbursement for $20 an hour for the training, was that? No, I'm sorry. That's 21, I believe. Page 21, ending in 306, the 20 hours for. You have that? So that number 12.4, is that the total cost, or is that the cost and then included in the reimbursement?
All that is the 20 hours, along with any carryovers we get from this year. We haven't gotten our amount for this year. But we get $20 an hour for each officer we have, for 20 hours. So we multiply that times the amount of officers we have. Clearly, the $20 an hour doesn't cover the cost that we get as far as for the salary, as far as if we have to pay for the training. The Attorney General puts a set dollar amount on the reimbursement and says, these are the numbers you have to have. This is what we're going to pay you. I'm sorry if it costs you more than that, but this is what we're going to give you.
Okay, because I know last year, excuse me, last year there was a couple times when we anticipated a grant, we didn't get it, and then we had to take money elsewhere to compensate for that. I mean, if this is by the Attorney General, is this guaranteed, or is this much like a grant where we anticipate getting it all the time? It could change.
All the documentation we've have is that's what we're going to get. When they tell us that, and they're up front, tell us this is what we're going to get, they've always came through for that. However, after next year, they're not sure. The only thing they keep telling us is next year it's 20, we're going to reimburse you for 20 at $20 an hour. The following year, it's going to be 40, but we're not sure what we're going to reimburse you at. So they've always followed through with what they tell us as far as money-wise, and they're up front, at the end of the year, we just got notification of what it's going to be. So that, they've always came through, if that answers your question, as far as if they promise something with the money and training,
Right.
they come through with it.
And reimbursement's more probable than a grant would be.
That's correct.
Okay.
Because they're forcing us to do these hours. They actually dictate what the training is going to be.
Are there other line items that you included a grant that you anticipate?
The only one that we do include, and we already know that we're getting, is the federal grant one. That's that $2,000 line item. We already know that we're getting that.
Okay.
We were notified that we've got that. And that's, like I said before, that's a reimbursement. When we purchase a vest, we get half the money back. And that number is based upon what we applied for and already received.
And we did get the award and verification.
that's
of
correct.
that.
So any other grants we'd get would be a bonus to this budget.
That's correct.
Okay, perfect. Because I think the board expressed halfway through the year, we said we'd like to see the full numbers, and then if we get the money in, great, but at least we know what the real numbers are.
Correct. So the
Okay.
2,000 you see there, we already received notification that we're getting that. And then obviously the training is something that's a reimbursement thing from the Attorney General, and that's what they tell us they're going to give us.
Okay. Page 25, line item ending in 01, well, it's, yeah, 0101.
Okay?
You said you anticipate one officer retiring, I believe,
For 30,000.
for 30,000 in your notes. What if that officer does not retire? What does that do?
It stays in there, and then
Okay.
it'll roll in. We've received notification that he is going to retire. In fact, I've received an email with the date on it that he's going to retire. Obviously, we don't have any written documentation from him as far as to present to you all yet.
Right.
But he's been eligible to retire since 2012, and he's getting to the point where he's ready to retire. So
Okay.
that's what that pays out the sick time, the vacation time that's left over, any comp time that's accrued. That's what that $30,000 figure is.
So worst case scenario, it sits there. If he retires in 18, we're covered anyway, carries over.
That's correct.
Okay. Page 29.
Okay.
Dispatch fees, $15. You said the county has agreed to keep the cost of $15 in 2017.
That's
For
correct.
how long?
Well, obviously the commission's changing, which they can make decisions. They're going to change the budget. They've already said, Monzel said he's going to push through a budget. Portune came out publicly and said that that's going to be modified come spring when Driehaus takes the board. What assurances or guarantees do we have on that $15? Because we know how much revenue they generate off that.
The only thing I will say is Chief Howarth had a conversation with the now director of the comm center, Andy Knapp, who's been in public safety for forever, I think longer than we have. And Chief Howard called him up and said, "Hey, we're preparing for this. What can you tell us?" And Andy Knapp told us that, "Hold on, I'll get back with you," and called us back and said he had called the administration down at the county, said, "I can't tell people that we're giving this to them for the whole year if we're not gonna." And he was assured that that was going to be the case.
By the current board?
Yes. Which is the magic
Right.
question.
So we really don't know what could happen. I mean, we hope for the best, expect for the worst,
Yes.
be ready for anything.
That's correct.
Okay. Because that's the biggest concern if they decide to. And then we don't know what's going to happen in 18.
That's correct.
Okay.
It's always
What was the last
a
amount?
highlight for our budget because sometimes you just don't know when it's an uncontrollable, like you said.
Right.
They could go in February and change that number, then we'd have to, look at it and see if we have to make any modifications. But if you look at our numbers as far as our fund balance projections, we feel strong that we'll be able to overcome anything that would change.
Okay. Page 32. The other miscellaneous 0810. You have the $10,000. That's obviously for the DART we talked about. Is that what you were referencing?
That's correct.
The DART officer?
That's correct.
Okay. I just want to make sure of that.
And the major increase in the 22 accounts on the appropriation side mirrors that of the revenue we anticipate receiving. So we budget that to make sure that the totals match.
Okay. And with regard to the TIF, I know we purchased those radios. We saved a lot of money long term because we got half price. But if I recall, I thought we only got 60% of what we actually needed. But there's still additional radios that we need to purchase. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I was going to say there's a difference. Police, as far as their radios, that pretty well took care of it, except for the computers and the cars. It's the fire that we need the special radios that have to be sealed for inside a fire. Yeah, the Chief Campbell can talk about that. But police, as far as the handheld radios and stuff, are taken care of as far as that goes.
And if you look at, got caught up here. If you look at page 24, 23 in the TIF what we were just reviewing, we've got 100% of our radios covered as far as the portable ones that the officers carry. The ones in the cruisers are a different story. And what you're going to see in the TIF line item as far as projected out, you're going to see an increase in the cost of the cruisers. I'm sure you saw that. you're going to see we've tacked on $5,000 per cruiser, and I believe it's was it 2020 or 2019?
2019.
We're going to start purchasing radios when we replace cars to make it take smaller bites instead of spending $100,000 on radios.
No sense in putting a new radio in a used car, so to speak. So in the recycling of the cars, we already have to equip them and put stickers and put the lights and all that. So we figured we would then, at that point in time, begin the new radio in the car system at that time.
Does that apply to this year's purchase?
The what?
Will that apply to this? No, not until
no.
20.
No, because the radios in the car really, and Public Works has radios, and everybody, those can last a while. Now, if one breaks and it's not repairable, we'll have to spend the $5,000 that year to take care of it. But that's why we decided, okay, we can push it to 2019 and start the rotation to do that. But at any time, if one of them goes bad and goes out and we don't have a spare, it's going to cost us $5,000 to replace it. But we think we've had pretty good luck, knock on wood.
I was just going to say, knock on wood.
We've had pretty good luck with them, so we think it's responsible to start the replacement in 19 and then do the rotation.
It was similar to the portable ones we bought. The ones we had were still working, but they stopped making parts for them. So if one would break, we'd have to scavenge up and try to fix them with other stuff we had. Same with the cruisers. They don't make parts for them anymore. If one would break, like Administrator Landrum said, we'd have to make a decision at that point. Hey, this would cost us $5,000 here or there. But I think this is real wood. Knock on some wood that they're going to last us till we start replacing them in 2019.
Final question. The levy, when we passed the millage, we built in the $40,000 breathing room for communication fees, potential of more officers. Now we've brought those on. Where are we? What's the projection? How long that levy is going to last?
It's in here.
Go to that page.
Page 20 of 45. Excellent question. If you look at the beginning fund balance for 2016, we're looking at 2778, 2,778,000. At the end of 16, we anticipate it growing to 3.4 million. The first year of the levy was 2015. So if it was a 5-year levy passed, obviously we like to stretch it as long as we can. And these are based on projections, so hopefully you don't hold a gun to my head if these are wrong. But these are based on projections. If you look at 15, 16, 17, 18, and 19 is the 5-year levy cycle. If you look at the bottom of that column there, we're still sitting at almost 3.1 million in carryover balance for 2019, which is supposed to be year 5 of the levy. All things considering, with inflationary costs and going from 29 officers to 32, that's all in there. All things considering, if at year 5, if you would have told me that we had $3 million carryover balance at that point in time, I would have been shocked. So that being said, I mean, we generally spend between 91 and 92% of our budget each year, which would essentially rolls that money over to the fund balance, the ending fund balance, which allows us to stretch that levy as far as we can. So if you look at our projections, again, they're projections. We don't dip below $1 million in the carryover balance till 2023. Which again, adding the 32nd officers and all that expenditures are in there is incredible, and we're really excited about it, to be honest with you. I mean, I think all three of us watch our money better here than we do at our own house. So,
Well, and I just think, I mean, being an attorney, I always think worst case scenario. I think this is best case scenario because healthcare costs aren't going down, communication costs aren't going down, and we don't know what those are. And in 5-8 years, we don't know what's going to happen to healthcare. So, I mean, I guess, so this is probably best case scenario.
yeah, but if you look at our 5-year projections, I mean, we put some hefty increases on those particular line items because we don't know. There's a 10% increase built, across the board on healthcare. We put a huge increase on the communication fees as well because, again, it's and prosecution and coroner fees, all those numbers that are uncontrollable by us. When they send us a bill, we have to pay it. So those are totally uncontrollable by us. I wish we could control their costs for them, but we can't. But like you said, it's a best case scenario, but we did account for a lot of those items as well as far as the big ticket items.
Thank you.
everybody's?
Yep.
Okay. Trustee Sturts?
No, the 2 questions I had were already asked. Thank you.
Okay. I only had one, because he had a long list. The legal fees. In 2015, we spent $25,000 on legal fees, and you're only projecting in 2017, 20. Knowing what we know about lawyers, do you feel that maybe you've shorted this account?
I will tell you that we feel very comfortable with that number. In 2015, we had an incident of an employee matter that year that we had to obviously have legal advice on. So that's
So there
why
was
that,
extenuating circumstances
correct.
in 2015 driving into 25,000.
that's
Okay.
correct. And that
great.
actually, that incident itself was pretty expensive.
Okay. And then with the DART officer, are we going to experience additional forfeiture dollars? We would like to. Good.
With DART, the way it's set up, they have to take care of their costs internal because it's a multi-jurisdictional task force.
Okay.
They have to account for their, obviously, expenditures. They have a lot of grant money that comes in to pay for that. But when you have 8 different agencies involved in the DART unit, it kind of spread the wealth a little bit as far as through all the 8 different agencies that are involved.
Are the LPRs dead?
As far as on the cruiser,
We're not going to do LP? I mean, we tried to do those and
we have, yeah, the one in the cars is still fully functional. We
The
use
one
it
in
every
car.
day.
Okay.
The one that we received the grant for the pole,
Yep.
they're still sitting down at Radcliffe in the boxes. So we can't, we've been trying and we continue to try to find locations to put them up. You know, obviously those are excellent tools for us, as a resource for us to use. But they're sitting in boxes down at Radcliffe.
Okay. All right. Fiscal Officer Luby, did you have anything?
Yes, I am encouraged by the projected fund balance, and I'm glad to see that you did include the 32 officers, because I wasn't sure how many officers you had projected out, so I am encouraged by that. Secondly, how many years do we get out of our vehicles?
We usually rotate them out, depending on when they come in and when they're ordered, every 4.5 to 5 years.
Okay, all right.
And the realistic point of view is you look at the mileage on a police cruiser, you have to look at the idle time, you have to look at the way the car's driven, you have to look at all those things that, you know, I heard a nominal figure that 1 mile of a police cruiser equates to something, but to be honest with you, I don't remember what that number is. But the idle time alone, as far as sitting on runs or on traffic stops, the numbers are astronomical. And it just, those cars, when they're after 4.5 to 5 years, they're ready to be replaced.
Okay.
Well, but we also, too, the longer you wait, the less value is in it. We have a high request of local jurisdictions, and some not so local, an hour or two away, that will pay us premium dollar for our cars because they know we will maintain it. So we do recoup some good funds for that. If we waited and pushed it, that number would severely be diminished to hardly any value. So it's like you get it while the getting's good with the selling of the vehicles, which the board passes when we do that on an annual basis. So,
And just to reflect on that, I get telephone calls a lot from agencies, are you ready to sell us your cars yet? I mean, they're ready to go, and we benefit from that because that allows us for us to put new equipment in our cars. Because if we would strip the cars down and sell them, a taxi cab company or somebody would purchase them, and we would get literally pennies on the dollar, where, if, you know, the departments that buy them, they can't afford to buy new equipment. So they, you know, it benefits them, but it also benefits us because they pay us a premium. Like Administrator Lander said, they pay us a premium for the cars when we get rid of them because they know our mechanics, they take excellent care of our cars.
Okay.
I want to discuss shared services briefly, and this would apply to all the departments. I know we added some accounts this year, the departments have, and I would like to, it's more of a cosmetic, but I would like to get Beth to, you know, include the shared services description in the description of the account. We spent a lot of time and effort trying to nail these numbers down, so I'd like to easily identify those numbers for all the funds. And also, you know, some of the departments, they use estimates of the shared services. Some of them are using actual. So for 2018, I'd like to come up with a policy that, we're all on the same page. We estimate or we use actual, but we can talk about that in 2018. That's all I have.
Okay, well, that concludes the police. Thank you very much, Lieutenant Braun and Lieutenant Macaluso. And you'll stick around at the end in case we have any public questions, okay?
Thank you.
All right, next we'll have the Fire Department, Chief Doug Campbell.
All right. Thank you, trustees. I'll try to get rolling with a kind of a summary format, just kind of explain to where we were kind of this time in 2015, what we had set out to do this year. Many of our goals reflected around our most critical needs, first and foremost being our self-contained breathing apparatus. I put in nearly $380,000 in grants this year. I would have loved to say we got them all. We fell short in a number of areas. I'll go into detail on some of those things that we tried. But this was really a critical factor. You think about being able to do your job in fighting fires without the most critical piece of equipment to get into fires. We received these in a grant in 2004, and pretty much they've lived their life. They're irreparable. It's hard to find parts. They're obsolete. So it's time to change, and that's why we kind of focused on going the grant route with these. We were not successful this year in getting that grant, and that's why I've come to the board in my TIF request, and I'll go into detail on that when we talk about TIF. We also looked at ways of, one of our big critical factors is our ambulance situation, and you've probably heard over the years and seen the repair bills for all the diesel mechanical operations and stuff like that. We still have problems with our diesel apparatus. We've actually been fortunate in retasking our one of our frontline ambulances, which is essentially like buying a brand new ambulance, but instead of the normal $210,000, we were able to do this through state bid and Horton contract, just less than $90,000. So basically, it's a brand new ambulance. So 3 frontline ambulances now are all gasoline, much easier to maintain, lower costs and things. Pretty much we're stuck with tire replacements and those type of things, not the big diesel repairs. We did look at options as far as replacing the nearly $250,000 in communication equipment this year. Again, a lot of that was done through grants. We applied the Ohio Capital Safety Grant. We looked at the regional AFG grant, and neither one were successful. In looking back, the feedback that we got was our radios have not reached the 15-year mark. So we got bounced just because these were all purchased in 2003. So it wasn't necessarily anything that we did wrong in presenting need, but in terms of their communication factors, FEMA looks to a 15-year mark to replace those portable radios. So that even disqualifies us from applying this year. So this wouldn't be something that we could look into possibly next year in an 18 cycle. We continued to purchase turnout gear. We did that through TIF funding this year. In the 17 budget, we're going to split with TIF and operational funds to continue that, because those were purchased on a grant as well. So the idea is that you buy minimal sets in cycle, so you're not buying the full amount in the hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars. We did formally adopt our active threat response policy, and you're like, well, how does that cost money? Well, ultimately, the fire department doesn't normally have a budget for ballistic helmets and plate carriers and, armor-proofing personal protective equipment. So that was added this year. So we successfully funded that through operations and the sale of one of our Explorers. We used the funds for that. We did upgrade a major component in our headquarters, our security system card reader, and now what this is going to allow us to do with the construction of the new station, all 3 stations will operate under the same security system that the administration is. So It's common throughout. We had 2 different systems previously, so we got that knocked out with this year's budget as well.
Well, after next year's it's going to be all 3 stations, admin and police will all be under the same security system. So,
Yeah. So we felt it was good. We could do it with this year's budget, take care of it this year, knowing that the new Greenwell station would have that system in it. So that worked out well. We received notice in late 2015 that Dr. Lovett was retiring, and with 1 month's notice, we had to get back in the cycle of where do we get our medical evaluations, and we started back up with TriHealth. We'd had experience with them in pre-employment, but again, you're talking about that's past budget time and trying to work with them on their contracts and their services and things like that. And I think we successfully pulled it off. I mean, it was one of those things where it dragged out a little bit, but we're back up and running with that. So we were able to do that as well. And another goal to kind of finalize is this budget was set out this year to do some really good things with external and internal training and really build up our professional development. The crystal ball was a little broken. I didn't envision the amount of turnover that we had this year, and with that turnover comes a lot of internal testing and things like that. And unfortunately, the training budget in 16, a lot of those funds that we used for promotional processes and testing all came out of that training budget. So we didn't get to do everything that we had set out to do, but fortunately, we're able to do it within budget without any additional appropriations. So that's kind of what 16 looked like. This budget, in summary, for 17 is there's a couple things, you guys obviously realize on the horizon. We have the new Greenwell station open up. So some of the most significant changes you see in the budget is actually going from a 800 square foot building to, our 11,000 square foot building. And there's a lot of assumptions that are made. And I think the questions we received on FAB and ideas of how we're estimating and gas and utilities and things, since the Rapid Run station is essentially the same footprint, that's the model we're using. I would expect it to be a little less. You're talking about a newer building, better insulation, those type of things that go with that, better, more economical utilities, higher efficiencies. It should be less, but if you look at how the budgeting process worked for the new Station 36, it's as if it's a sister station to the Rapid Run station. So that's how we did that budgeting. So I took that into account in all our summaries. A big chunk of our budget this year was the SCBA, and it's primarily going to have to come out of TIF. Realizing that, coming to the board and getting the additional radios that we did, as gracious as it is, it fills a huge void, but there's still a huge void left. This would have been a fantastic thing if I could tell you that we got the grant, we really held it off, and we tried hard. I mean, this was something that I thought we were really competitive for. But it breaks my heart that, such a vital piece of equipment is going to hit the TIF pretty hard. So to the tune of $190,000. We have no other options but to buy it all at one time. These aren't things that you can piecemeal. It's important that everybody has the same equipment, and that's compatibility. When you have multiple firefighters, if one goes down or starts losing air, you can't have 2 different devices. You train on one device, and that is an example of how we got these in the first place. When we were awarded the grant the first time for these devices, it's because we were a jumbled mess of SCBAs and stuff. So we fortunately, this is our next best option, but we can't go much longer with our SCBAs the way they are. We did look to acquire some additional radios, and what we're looking to do is, because we don't qualify internally, part of the TIF funds also will address a 3-year span where we're not replacing the $180,000 in radios that are still left to buy after the TIF purchase this year. What we're doing is we're spacing them out, and I've put more in our operational funds to cover some of those costs. And I can break those down into detail, but essentially by the end of those 3 years, we will have made up where we've lost ground in terms of our radio replacement. big part of our issues with 2016, it's compounding year after year, and you guys keep hearing me say this. I know you're sick of hearing it, but part-time personnel retention, it seems like every meeting I'm asking you to hire somebody, and then somebody's leaving. It does get exhausting, and I tell you what, my hat's off to the personnel that have kind of put in the extra effort this year to maintain staffing what it is, because if you think about where we started the year and where we finished the year, the turnover in the department has just been phenomenal. I mean, probably a third of the department's now probationary at this point. I mean, so we're going through some serious growing pains. I wish I could say there's an end in sight, but realistically, the labor market for part-time personnel is really, really, really drying up. So focusing on retention and recruitment in the future, if it means me going to the schools and really trying to market Delhi specifically, those are the things that we're looking to do. This budget's going to take care of a lot of that. We've started already in the process of doing some information sharing amongst stations, so this budget is going to take care of improving our technology and our use of technology amongst the stations. I think it's important to kind of note that we will continue the turnout gear replacement cycle. It's a shared cost between TIF and operating budget. I'm looking to install a new repeater system at the new Greenwell station. One of the things that Delhi, the topography lacks is a radio connection between our regional operations center and Delhi. In the event, like we had a wind event with Ike, if the system goes down and we lose radio contact, one of the things that we have, because of topography, we can't communicate with our emergency operations center. What this will allow us to do is, believe it or not, that Greenwell station is one of the highest points in Delhi. It'll give us an opportunity to talk not on a digital radio, but on basically an amateur VHF UHF system, allow us to communicate and continue our emergency operations in light of losing possible digital communication. So it's a kind of redundant thing. Less than $3,000, but a necessary backup piece of equipment, and it's going to really help out Delhi Township. Big costs coming for Rapid Run. We are fighting keeping our HVAC system alive out there. It's leaking like a sieve, and time has come. All three systems units need to be replaced, and that is not in the TIF budget. I'm taking that out of our operational budget. So you'll see a big increase with Station 30's repair budget, because that $24,000 that we estimate, and we've got 5 estimates, that $24,000 is going to cover that in that replacement as well. We're going to expand our safe sitting classes. That does require a little bit of change in how we do things. I'm looking to expand our active threat PPE, so we're going to add more ballistic helmets and bulletproof vests on our fire equipment as well. And then last but not least, if you look at what we're really trying to set out to do, Ron would agree with me in this. We need another ambulance. I know it's like, hey, we just got one, but even our reserve ambulance is, stretched thin. It's in the shop a lot. It's the last diesel we have. So what my goal is with the 28 account, the MS revenue account, is to build enough cash carry over in that so that I can use those funds rather than come to TIF and purchase a new ambulance in 19 or 20, preferably 18, 19, but we'll see how that does. That's dependent on the revenue. All right. So if you want, I can just briefly summarize our revenue status. In the fire fund, really the only comment I have is it's similar to the police. We're seeing the same things, just a small increase. Facility usage fee, that decreases the result of the fact that with the third station comes additional grass mowing and lawn care by Parks and Rec. And we've removed them from the facility usage fee because it's basically a wash between what we would charge them to be in our facility and them to mow our facility's lawns. So that's all I have on revenue. Along the 10 accounts,
Page numbers.
page numbers 16 to 24. I will say I'm going to go off and summarize what are the big ones that kind of stand out. If you do have questions where I've skipped over, just stop me. I'll reverse and kind of go back at it. You can see there's no significant changes in the budget until you come down to communications equipment. One of the things that we just talked about was how we're going to make up this additional equipment. What I'm looking to do is to buy new MDTs for the frontline fire apparatus and ambulances out of that communications budget. So that $22,000 that's represented there is going to take a good chunk of that additional equipment. Rather than coming to TIF, we're going to pull that out of that communications budget. Moving on down to the 1009 account, Station 36 repairs. That's just a nominal address of, taking care of a small station and then now moving into a bigger station. We do have warranty work that gets done, so we're not covering very much. So that's only significant change with that. And then the Station 30 repairs, that $34,000 that's marked in there for the 24 of that is the HVAC. And I will say this, we're having problems on the air conditioning side, but they've all advised that it's one of those things. They're in there, they might as well replace the furnaces as well. So rather than just, piecemeal it out, they're in there, the labor's included. That's why we're going to go through that additional expense. If you have any questions on the dispatch fees, I have the same assurances from Andy Knapp. I know, you're talking changes in politics. They did mention today that Ms. Treehouse did review the budget. There was no comments, but it was mentioned again today at the county chiefs meeting that it would be throughout the year $15. So for us, it's not as much of a change, but it's a nice reduction if they can hold that. But moving on to 17 to 24. Just comments on the gas and electric for Station 36, water, sewer, trash, and phones. Just realize those are all the new systems in the new station, and that's what accounts for those budget increases. One nice thing to bring up is the workers' comp insurance. That was a significant decrease for us. I would hope that continues.
It won't.
It won't.
It won't, promise.
Yeah, so we would be looking for a possible increase in 18. Any questions on the 10 expense side?
Just one.
Yes.
Station 33, gas and electric is $32,000, and the other two are half that?
Correct.
You got 3 floors.
Yeah, 32,000 square feet versus 11,000 square feet. And, it's a big building. It is a big building.
I didn't realize it'd be twice.
It is far less, and the things that we've improved on, it is far less than what it used to be. It's getting better. The efficiency is improving, but we're having to go back and re-engineer a lot of the things that are already in place. Okay, we talk a little bit about ambulance revenue. This would be page 23, 24. So one of my goals was to establish a elderly fall prevention program. I think you guys had seen some of the notes that I had given you in terms of our revenue projections. We are seeing a decrease in revenue this year, and really it can only be attributed to one thing, and that's the significant increase in falls. How's that translate into difference revenue? Well, we don't transport, we don't charge for non-transports. Secondary to that, the biggest concern as fire chief and the personnel that are operating is when you have preventable incidents such as falls, it takes units out of service where you would want them to be available for structure fires, non-breathers, those types of things. So having a program in place to encourage folks in terms of offsetting the fall prevention issues can go a long way. It's not going to help with revenue, but it goes a long way in keeping our units available for significant emergencies and things like that. So just be prepared. We've seen a little bit. They are assuring us that it is holding, for the most part, the community's insurance, and we're not seeing a lot of effects in the community from the ACA. So that combined, I think, if you look going forward, as long as we maintain our revenues in this arena and we can hold back expenses enough, that carryover will be there in 1820 for a new ambulance. Not soon enough. 24, just generally, really, I've got a couple increased areas. The big thing is we're seeing a significant increase in our squad supplies and our drugs. So we've really beefed up those areas, because as good a shopping as we do and going to different vendors to find the best price. Just an example, 3 years ago, Narcan was $11 a dose. It's over 40 something. So those kind of things take this into account, but we're looking at 15 to 20% increases in those arenas. Everything else is kind of holding in line. Really on that 28 account, the goal is just get enough of a cash carryover by the time we need a new ambulance and not have to stretch out the TIF. Any questions there?
Okay. I'll begin. Trustee Oswald, any questions?
Can you review the TIF?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, TIF.
I'll do the TIF. Okay.
We're doing FAB too.
And FAB.
All right. Get my right page here. Okay, we have the
20. Page 23 of 23.
23, thank you.
Okay, so the $8,000 for the SCBA's, that is coupled with the $12,000 I'm taking out of the operating budget. So essentially what the board's been approving for the last 2 years is $20,000 for, not SCBA's, I'm sorry, PPE, structural firefighting gear. That has continued this year because we still need the number of replacements, but in light of what we've experienced on the TIF side, the operational budget's going to carry $12,000 of that. The $190,000 essentially in SCBA's, and then the $36,000 in radio equipment that we are going to look. What Administrator Landrum was referring to as far as the radios that we just purchased are not intrinsically safe. And we need those in order to fight fires in wet environments, hazardous atmospheres. They just cannot produce a spark, and we need the water tightness and those type of things. So the ones that we bought from the RNC did not have those qualifications. So we still need portable radios for them to carry into fires. 13, 14 portable radios. Those will be funded out of that TIF portion of it. That'll allow us to start eating into part of that supply. Think about it as well. We have mobile data radios that we're replacing, but we also require mobile data radios we have the MDCs that have to connect to a special radio as well. So we need those, and the mobile radios that you see, not the handheld, but the actual ones that are installed in the engines and the ambulances, all need to be replaced as well. That's not all going to get done this year, but the idea is that we get these portables that are intrinsically safe first and get those on the docket. We should be pretty well established.
And this, as per instructed that we were given, Doug did an excellent job at trying to get write-up grants. I mean, he did do that. We were hoping, wing and a prayer, and I think he discussed well why we didn't. But this is kind of budgeted worst-case scenario, meaning, when you look at the TIF budget 3 years out or whatever, or even further, and in any department, we didn't bank on. There's only one thing that we banked on and that's under the Parks Department for a senior center, CDBG, which we've had very, very good luck with that grant. But any other of the TIF expenditures or fire expenditures that were capital, we did not bank on grant revenue. We went ahead, budgeted worst case scenario. If we happen to get a grant, then that'll be money in the bank.
All right, then we'll hear from our FAB representative, Mr. Andrew Marks.
Okay, so the other members of the FAB that participated in the fire department review were Charlie Fear and Scott Heenan. So the three of us met a few weeks ago, went over the budget with Doug, and as in years past, very logically put together, well-grounded in the facts. We were very impressed. I think like Doug pointed out, the biggest risk or surprise this year was the turnover, but they dealt with that very well and within budget, kind of creative and resourcefully. So the bottom line is we're in support and recommend the budget that's been presented.
Great.
That's it.
Thank you. All right, then we'll begin with questions and comments from trustees and fiscal officer. Trustee Oswald.
The radios we purchased from the RNC, the lifetime on those are 15 years?
Boy, that's a hard projection to make. I mean, the 15 years that I was citing is what FEMA is saying they will not replace radios that are younger than 15 years. That's where we felt short. These radios were, the majority were purchased in 2003. We just didn't meet the threshold for the age. Motorola is essentially the ones that we just bought. I mean, they've been around. I haven't heard any age limits. Aaron, have you heard anything different?
No, our biggest issue is they told us that next year they will
No support.
be making parts for those radios.
Right, but not the ones we just got from the RNC. So the RNC, they're not telling us 20-year, 25-year life expectancies.
Well, we'd hope for at least 10, right? I mean,
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
I mean that's what we've come to expect. I mean we're getting 15 out of these. So I would say with better technology, different types of batteries, yes, that we'll be able to get at least 15 out of these. That's where we're at now, and I think Jeff, when he was explaining it, we're already doing this with our gear. And if you're going to buy a new police cruiser with a new radio, we can do the same thing with ambulances. We can do the same things. We're trying to get on cycles. We got to the point where you get so many of these grants and you do these large sum purchases, then you become grant dependent. Then you can't get out of the cycle. So that's really what we've taken it upon ourselves to do, and this is what you've been allowing us to do, is to break it down into smaller chunks. Then we're not so dependent on these grants. I really don't like being in the situation we are in with the SCBAs because we have no choice. I know it feels like I'm coming here with a gun to your heads. That's essentially the point I don't want to put you in, but that's how we've gotten to this. And this is one of those events. If you don't get it in a grant, you do have to buy it all in one piece. The radios, we'll spread it out. We can make this work over a number of years. We don't have we don't have the absolute critical need right now to do it all in 1 year.
And things like this, I would strongly, we have budgeted. I really was challenged this year in the capital for the TIF budget, and we went out to 2024. We went to one extra year instead of 2023 was the original TIF. And then the 15 years after 2023. But 2024 is in there is because that's the last year of our payment that we borrowed on the Greenwell Fire Station. But we've got engines budgeted. We have public works trucks budgeted. We have very big capital items budgeted now for the future. So that really, there's a plan. And as each year goes, you need to keep adding a year to that plan and looking ahead and what items. Eventually, big items like the Quint, that's going to need to be replaced. And the more planning on that ahead of time, because right now it's what $900 and almost $1 million replacement cost. Luckily, when you get far enough ahead in TIF, not to have a crystal ball to say we didn't borrow any other funding for economic development of some sort to have reimbursement costs through that. After 2024, the TIF funds are debt-free, which frees up a lot of extra funds for capital improvements. And of course, another thing just for the public in general that may be listening, TIF funds can only be used, the old TIF funds, 1994 TIFs, could be used for capital improvements of township needs. Example, paying for a new firehouse, new fire truck, police cars. New TIF cannot be used for that. But the old TIF can be used for that, but zero of any TIF can be used on operating expenses. No salaries, no paying the electric bills, none of that. So I just want to be very clear if anybody doesn't understand what TIF can be used for or can't be used for, please feel free to contact us. We can explain it in more detail.
Trustee Oswald?
Page 17, the legal fees, 1545. You budgeted 7,500 for legal fees this year.
Mm-hmm.
Police obviously budgeted 20. You guys are in negotiations. Do you think that's an adequate number?
I think they'll get whatever we give them. No, we.
I know.
This is a tough.
Yeah,
thing
you
to
wanna
call.
go there.
That was a joke. He's in the audience. No. I have looked over this over the years. This one's a tough one, just because we have been good about meeting this on spot. We have had issues where we've had legal fees come up mid-year related around EMS treatment and protocols and things like that kind of caught off. But $7,500 is what I know. I'm comfortable with that number. If it requires more, I believe we can do things before we have to go coming back for reappropriations in it, but I think $7,500 a fair shot.
All right. Narcan, how many units do you get with that budget?
Well, we have been fortunate that we have received a total of 54 units, I believe, since September of last year from the county public health. So they've given it to us.
Did some of those go to
free.
the police officers, or is that just fire?
No, it's
FBI
both.
gives you get your own from the FBI?
Same place.
Same place. Okay. Okay.
Right. So if you're averaging, in our case, 60 to 70 administrations a year, it's good.
Overdoses.
Yeah. I mean, it's, yeah.
It's a nice way of saying it.
Yeah, I wish I could say it was overdoses. It's administrations because some people require more than one. So in fairness, that's what we're looking at. We administer it between 60, 70 times a year. That's just us. I mean, but yes, that budget is a lot more than that. It's a lot more in terms of more expensive medications that we carry than just the Narcan. Narcan's probably one of the cheaper.
Okay. And last question on the levy cycle. I know you have the sheet in there. Pretty much the same question I did for police. That's best case scenario because obviously you can't predict communication fees, healthcare costs. We don't know what could happen if the ACA gets removed and we get a bit more part-time back and all that. So, I mean, that's somewhat of a best case scenario. Is that fair to say?
It's extremely fair to say. I think one of the things that I have to caution, and I keep bringing this up to FAB as well, and the concern is that if you're looking at the numbers and you're like, wow, it feels pretty safe. These numbers are in light of the fact that from our part-time standpoint, if you look at what we've spent this year in terms of part-time salaries, we're barely touching it. I have no part-time people to pay. So I would caution you to say this budget, the way this works out in terms of our expenses is as if every spot is filled in the part-time ranks. So we're not at a point where I can comfortably tell you that I'm happy the way we're running. We don't have enough people, and it's on the part-time side. But you can't force people to come apply. You can't force them to come in here and join us. So that's the struggle we have is in that part-time labor pool. What I've given you is a 5-year projection based on even this year's projected carryover, which has significant savings in the part-time salaries because I have no people to pay. They're just not there. So when we have the 4 part-time people that leave, and then you have that period of time that it takes to hire 2 people, I'm still not paying 2 positions. So that's really what this is saying. So I take it with caution. This is not the budget that we don't want to run like this forever. This is supposed to be temporary, but that's why you're seeing these numbers. I would suspect we get back on the horse and we get a fairly decent part-time pool in here, these numbers are going to tighten up a little bit more. But these are good, safe numbers. I've given you pretty much every projection that I can look at as if we're 100% staffed with our part-time people, the way it should be.
Did you build an increase in healthcare like police did?
Yes,
Okay. How much per year?
it was 10%.
10%. They all had uniform numbers.
Yeah.
All right. Nothing further.
Okay, Trustee Sturts.
Just for my own edification, with your turnover you've had, does everybody have their own set of, do you call it turnout gear or the PPE, and then do you reassign those?
Yes,
as
most
they
of it
leave?
most of it is reassigned. I mean, that's the thing is we're down from a staff of close to 70 people total down to we're right around 54 people. We got below 30 part-timers for the first time I ever remember in the last 20 years. I've never seen it that low. So what you're talking about is we do have reserve PPE that's available to use, and as long as we find the right size, I mean, we've been good. We haven't had to buy new gear for anybody that's come through in quite a few years. And when we do our replacement cycles, most of those are going to the immediate need. We're looking for, who has the most wear and tear with individuals, a lot of full-time employees. I think it was a handful of part-time employees. But with those cycles, we're getting caught up on everything. So we have not had that problem yet.
Thank you.
Okay. Lift assist. You're smiling at me about this. There have been other townships that have given this course in lift or fall risk management
Yes.
type thing. Yep. Have they been effective?
They say they are.
Okay. Then my next question is, when we dispatch to lift assist, what's going?
An ambulance and a chase vehicle until they show up and decide whether or not that person is in their capability
Police, are
of
you
lifting.
dispatched as well? From some of my reading on this, they have these little lift squads, okay? And maybe they're not dispatching all that equipment. Have we looked into that possibility?
If you're referring to a non-emergency response, I would caution you with that because I just got done saying I don't have enough people for an emergency response. If we do the non-emergency stuff, we're taking away from our most critical thing. So on the offset, I would say, no, we don't have the resources available at the firehouse for non-emergency details because that would include things like home visits, transporting somebody from their house to the doctor's office. Those takes your 911 system out of work. I mean, if we were just a plethora of people and we had more than enough resources, that's what agencies that typically are just sizable can do those type of things. But we're at bare bones here. This is where I need to devise ingenious ways of not putting us on those kind of details. So if it's educating the community, our socially isolated elderly, and educating adults who have elderly parents that live in Delhi, and say these are the things that you need to help us help you, so they don't have a fall. I mean, we can talk mortality and morbidity rates with the elderly. You fall and break a hip, the chances of dying increase by 2. What it does to our community to have an elderly patient transport and never come home, those type of things. It's a bigger social issue, but from the fire department's aspect, those are runs that we need to cut down because they are a drain on the system and they pull away from much more emergent needs. Now, a fall with an injury is an emergency need. This is your lift assist. I just can't get up from the bed to go to the bathroom type things. We go through it, and it's. I caution that with the fact I don't want to tell people don't call, because there could be something else there. It's how to educate and get to the most of the 30,000 residents we have so they know what's a good idea to call and how to get these resources in place.
Okay. All right, Fiscal Officer Luby.
No questions.
All right, then.
Thank you very much.
Doug Campbell, and if you'll stay around till the end, if there's any additional public questions. All right, our final department for the evening is Public Works. Ron Ripperger.
Thanks, trustees. I'm going to kind of do the similar thing and start out with some highlights on 2016. Let's see. To start out, we had one of the biggest paving projects, and as long as I can remember, I know probably over 12 years. I'll get into some numbers in a minute. That was 19 streets, the entire park, the senior center. We pretty much started early, and we just wrapped up about 10 days ago or 2 weeks ago. We finished paving, so it was a good time. We started out early with a small change order of almost $8,000, and that had to do with a waterworks project on Wilnett. That street was actually set up to be paved last year, I think, and we found out waterworks had a big project, so at last minute we got contacted. We paid for the curbs and they paved the street, so it worked out in our favor and it looks nice. Luckily it was a short street, so we will be having another change order at the end of this month to wrap up this year's contract. I think most of you know we had some overages as far as the park paving. It was kind of in bad shape, so we ended up with that other change order about $50,000 over the original contract amount, which was $1.5 million, a little over that, which is okay because we still appropriated $1.7 million. So we're still $100,000 to the good, although we normally don't go over our contractor's contract amount, but this year we couldn't help it.
Over contract, but under budget.
Yes.
So.
Okay.
Couple other small things. We kind of had a bad year with equipment repairs also. Normally I was budgeting $18,000 for a while. I'm at I think I budgeted $20,000, and we had to do an additional out of salt for $7,000, so we're at $27,000. Yeah, we had some bad luck with turbos and truck equipment, but we had a lot of good luck for numerous years, so it hopefully kind of equaled out there. We also moved $10,000 into the asphalt account from salt, and that was just favorable construction weather, and maybe the new summer help probably helped out with that, so that worked out good. To start on 2017, as you know, there's 4 accounts total. I'll go through each one and start with the O2s on page 7. This account is not very exciting, to say the least. For the past 6 years, the only thing we took out of this account was fleet insurance, and what the plan was is to build the balance and then put, this year was the first year, $50,000 into paving the roads. I kind of skipped through revenue, but revenue is just based on the past 5 years, so it doesn't change much on that.
And that, to help explain, because they don't understand the revenue sources, that's the motor vehicle license. So when you go and renew your tags and license, it's, I'm not sure if it's $5
No,
per.
not on this one.
Not on this one?
Mm-hmm.
I thought you was under 2. Motor vehicle license tax?
That's permissive.
Okay.
Is a $5 tax.
It's a $5 tax.
Mhm.
Okay. Sorry. So I'll let you take it then.
All right. So I
Get to that one then.
Yeah, that stays pretty stationary. I know the $5 permissive tax will jump a little bit. It started a few years ago because you can get your tags for 2 years now, I believe, but it was still minimal. Let's see, that kind of takes care of, let's see. On page 9, if you want to take a glance at that for the notes. As you can see, it's listed fleet insurance, which went down from last year a little bit, and also the notes for road repair contracts. You'll see the same note for each fund. That was kind of Pete's idea, try to simplify things. But the total was 500,000 out of Public Works money and then 450 out of TIF. So moving on to the gasoline tax, which is 03s, which will start on page 12. Okay, this is everybody there. The revenues first. Most of these don't change. If you go down to 02 other, the only thing that'll change on that revenue would be the county lease, and that will coincide with what kind of building upgrades we normally do. We've done quite a few the past probably 5 years, windows, heat, but 2017, which I'll get to appropriations in a minute, but is back down to normal. Salt, down there third from the bottom, 02. That's kind of a guesstimate of what Oak Hills will spend with us. They use our dome and pay back everything they use, and it's kind of depends on the weather there. Other than that, those revenue accounts really don't change much. On to page 13. The first account there is new equipment, purchases and rentals. I know you guys are aware of the resolution as far as the rental agreement with the salt loader. We split between Oak Hills and Hamilton County. And this year, which this has been on the 5-year budget for probably at least 3 or 4 years, is we're going to purchase a new Bobcat. It's finally time, and it's due, that's for sure. This is something we share with the parks when needed. They check with us, and when they can, they'll come and borrow it. The cost there is $65,000. That is not the trade-in value either, so it would deduct from there a good amount. Moving down to 0403, mechanics toolbox is just something we've had on our list to do at some point. Upgrade the toolbox. Ours is getting a little old and not working like it used to. The next countdown, 0502, fleet parts. This is what I talked about earlier. It was a bad year last year. I upped that a little bit, but hoping we don't have to use all that. We'll touch base with 0202 salt. At the time, I didn't have the price locked down. It's $55 per ton in the notes, but we were able to lock it down at $52.77. So that's been the cheapest it's been in years.
I was going to say, please remember just a year and a half ago when we were talking 130, 150 a ton. So this is really good news.
And the last count there is, as you can see, the road repair contracts. It normally stays about the same, and then it has the note there next to it. Moving on to road and bridge, 04s. Start at page 14. All of these revenue accounts, I normally pretty much get these numbers from Beth, or I'll go back 2 years and double check it. Not really any control over the revenue. And the next page just kind of has the same note, as you can see that. It doesn't really fluctuate much. Expenses on that same page 14. As you can see, salaries was a little bit of an increase, and I will touch base on that when I get to the notes. On that same page, you can see road repair contracts down about 4 accounts, 0301. It looks a little odd, but that was because of a carryover last year. I don't know if anybody caught that, but it kind of stands out. And all the rest are really...
And I'll touch base on that because we didn't wrap up. We're wrapping up 2016 projects now. They're done. It's done. So he's going to do... Are we going to have that on the next
meeting.
resolution?
Next
or
meeting
next
will be
meeting?
the-
So November 30th, we're closing out. Last year's 15 projects, what month did we close out? March?
We paved in the
April?
spring.
Yeah. So drastic difference. So we were like 6 months behind last year. So that carryover was from 15's budget into 16's what you see.
Well, it was snowing at this time last year, I think, a few days ago. That don't help. If we can move on to page 16. And I'll touch base with that first one, salaries. It is an increase, and it's just kind of like what Jeff explained through the police. I have 2 that can retire. I haven't received anything in writing. They're looking into it and looking at their options, so it is in there. Our project inspector, when he does retire, I want to overlap that a little bit so he has some training. He deals with all the sidewalks and a lot of the road projects with me, so... moving down through that, 0301, again, money put toward the road projects, 200,000, same note. And the rest is pretty much county numbers in that account. And moving on to motor vehicle permissive tax, 23. Page 20.
Okay.
Again, the road repair project or contract, 150,000. The next account down is fuel. Hopefully, if they stay at these prices, we're even below that this year. So I think we plan for the worst and hope it doesn't snow much. Going down. Health insurance, 0910. We do have an employee now that hasn't been taking insurance, but will be needing to. So that's in there. Plus new employees, if the retirees go, we kind of plan for the worst there. We have one that's not using our insurance also. So. Moving down, a lot of this is just minimal accounts, kind of staying the same. 0918, water and sewer. I know Pete's aware of it, but we had a water leak. You may not see it on this sheet. It would probably show up more next year, probably. But we were able to fix that, and it's minimal amount that was lost there. Building repairs, I touched base with that earlier, 0927. We always budget $5,000 for just repairs. Normally we have another big project to go on top of that, but this year we're keeping it stationary. Nothing major planned. Is he ready? Okay. That's pretty much it on my accounts. If you want to look at go back a little bit at page, my balances was on page 6, yeah.
Page 6.
Page 6.
I use this a lot. I know me and Pete have looked at it a good amount. If you look at the end of balance on 2016, and you can see on 2017, I mean, we're really spending more than what we're bringing in, but what we're doing is running down the balance from the previous year, which is 1.3 million over that. So we're spending a good amount over. Normally we don't use all that, which helps us keep us. We usually try to keep a balance of about $1 million, and that's should be about where we stay.
And the two issues that he kind of we hopefully fluffs. And when I first came here 4 years ago, I was looking at Ron like in disbelief. And after we had a severe bad weather, I never questioned him again. So, but the road contract is one he builds in because he just doesn't know. And of course, things related to the weather, salt, and stuff like that. And usually, if we have an average winter, he'll have salt left, and we've been doing really well. This is the first year because we did the park that we actually, but we're still under budget with that, so he builds in a little bit there. So I think all in all, his accurate assessment is he'll still be at $1 million or more if not the worst case scenario happens.
And some of the salt varies with the county. Like this year, we topped off with our money the salt dome, and sometimes the county will, so we'll have extra. So it kind of goes back and forth. I know it wasn't a real bad winter last year, but we ended up topping it off and not them. So next year, it should even look better. So, okay, I was going to move on to TIF, page 4. Let's see. Normally, I think everybody knows we normally get $500,000. It was decreased a little bit with the restraints on TIF this year, which we tried to make up from that O2 account I was talking about. That probably helped out with that a little bit. As Pete mentioned, our trucks were in there. And yes. And, I just want to say thanks for the money that, we usually hold pretty tight to for the roads. Next year, what we have set up, not in stone yet, but the majority of the roads were paved before 1990. So even though our roads are in good shape, I mean, that's pretty old. So, but try to stay on top of it and keep a good cycle. And I don't know if Pete mentioned as far as the truck years, we have it in there, and that can be switched depending on the condition of ours, what kind of problems we're having, and stuff like that.
So what year do we have his trucks in?
2022.
Yeah, 22 and 23. 325,000 each year, and he'll have to decide whether or not we actually break it up. Sometimes it's good to have the exact same truck, so you have the exact same parts. But then sometimes it's when you buy the same thing all in the 1 year, it's kind of bad because then you end up replacing them all at one time as well. So
True.
Okay. Let's hear from your FAB representative, Brian Gilligan.
Thank you. As always, Ron and Jim and Pete are always there to answer our questions. They meet with us halfway through the year for these our budget meetings that we have with them. They're always there to answer whatever questions we have. If they don't know it off the top, they will email or take care of us. But as with police and fire, after Dale Weisker and I sat down with Ron and Jim and Pete, we feel comfortable with the numbers and are good with what's being proposed for Public Works for 2017.
Okay, that's great. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
All right, we'll turn to trustees and fiscal officer, Trustee Oswald.
Couple quick questions. As far as the Delhi County roads with the Hamilton County engineer, do we know which ones they have budgeted or are looking at in 2017?
I know the grants that we had resolutions for that we put in for a few months ago. Well, it wasn't that long ago, about 3 months ago, have not been awarded at this time. They are going to talk about possibly doing loans on it on their side, not with us, to possibly fund that. We put in for Foley as a number 1 project under our name at their expense, and then a hillside slip for number 2. But as of now, neither have been funded, and I just checked that yesterday.
Because in previous years, I know we've sent follow-up letters and stayed on them, and then suddenly we get the roads. And so I'm hoping we can do that again, because they tend to go towards green more than Delhi sometimes.
We've been pretty fortunate the past few years, definitely. And next year, actually, I know Pete's aware of this. We have to do a resolution at some point this winter, but they want to tack on 2 roads to our contract. They give us the money for it, and then it's just on our contract. And the reason is we're just paving a few roads right next to theirs. It would be Martini. Is not set in stone, but I'd definitely say it's probably going to get paved.
I will add one thing, though, to that comment, though. They do go towards green. The reason they go towards green is because actually green uses TIF dollars to help fund county roads. So they actually are helping the county by using township TIF dollars to fund
That's a
county
function of
roads.
finance.
It's a function of finance, which we don't have. We do not have that type of funding to help them. They try to go the grant way with us, which has worked out really well. So,
Yeah, we've done pretty good, really, for not putting any of our money in.
right.
I believe Green paid Westbourne, and I think they paid for it, or most of it.
Yeah.
So we're doing pretty good.
Yeah.
Yep.
Real good.
And obviously, salt's a crapshoot. We never know. And before the Delhi Press calls you in interviews after we get a snowstorm, how many inches of snow are we going to get this winter?
I think it's going to stay like this all
That's
winter.
your prediction?
That's what we're hoping for.
You just made all the snow drivers mad.
I have nothing else.
All right, Trustee Sturts.
No, thank you.
Okay, Ron, I just have one, and that is, I think you did a fantastic job on the parks. And I think you contributed to the fact that the park levy passed because everyone comments on the appearance and the improved safety of driving your car and walking through the asphalt in the park. So I congratulate you for doing that, and it was a great job.
Yeah, I'm excited to see the Google Maps or the Cages overview with the new pavement.
What it
Should look
looks
good.
Okay, fiscal officer.
No questions.
Okay, thank you, Ron.
I did want to thank, I had that on my sheet, Pete. It was a lot of fun bickering over a couple cents here and there. That was a good time. And Jim and Fab, they've been great to work with.
Right. Thanks, Ron. All right, we will begin with first closing comments, and then you want to do public comments, or would you like to do public comments?
You can do public comments first.
Okay, do we have any public comments or questions this evening? Okay, good. All right, trustees, closing comments, as well as fiscal officer. Trustee Oswald?
I wanted to hear all the budgets presented, the recommendations from the FAB, and all my questions answered, what's happened tonight. So I do want to say congratulations to all the department heads, FAB, everyone that worked on this, certainly Mr. Luby and Mr. Landrum. So many times I get from residents, what do my taxes pay for? And it's $1 million question, literally, when we're dealing with these budgets. And they don't realize how much personnel, benefits, equipment, repairs we have. And when you guys do such a good job of not only laying out the budget, but keeping it the same every year when you're getting increased costs for healthcare, increased shared services, it's very easy to justify and say, hey, look, why don't you go take a look at our budget? We hit the budget every year. And now with the park levy, we have a balanced budget. So truly, it makes my job easier when you guys are on top of it the way you are. FAB, department heads, I truly appreciate it, and thank you.
Trustee Sturts?
Again, to reiterate what I said at the beginning, thank you for all your work. I know it takes hours and hours to get this together, and thank you for keeping it minimal and working as hard as you have to. So thank you.
Okay. Fiscal Officer Luby?
Again, thanks for all that you do and all the detail, and you guys do a great job. And like Will said, you make our job a lot easier. So thank you.
In comparison to other townships that I've talked to going through the budget process, we are so fortunate and so blessed that we go through this the way we do. And a lot of that has to do with the talent of our department heads as well as the volunteers on that financial advisory board. So we appreciate your volunteer times. It was a great evening tonight going through these three budgets, and we look forward to tomorrow night, again beginning at 5 o'clock, where we will cover community development, parks and recreation, and administration. Thank you so much for tonight.